Welcome everyone, Christine here with my campaign overview guide for Rakarth of the Dark Elves. He is not the best Dark Elf Legendary Lord. In fact, I would personally say that he is the worst. Other people would argue that Hellebron is worse than he is, but I disagree with that particular opinion. It's not that Rakarth is horrible. He's still a Dark Elf Legendary Lord, so he is still pretty decent. And he has a pretty good starting province as well. There are, however, going to be a number of issues that you're going to have to deal with in Rakarth's campaign. So, faction-wide effects, you get the monster pens, which allow you to capture a variety of hideous beasts and use them in battle. Forces do not receive vigor penalties from raiding stance, so when you are adopting a raiding stance, you don't get the tired effect on your army, and you get the minus 10% upkeep for all monstrous units. The problem with that is minus 10% upkeep, while it might seem very substantial, it's not good enough for monstrous units to justify using them, at least in the early portion of the campaign, or throughout the campaign in general. The reason is that monster units are just really, really expensive in a campaign, and that is the problem. And to be honest, many of the monster units that you can get for the monster pen, most of them are not really worth using. I mean, yes, Medusae, for instance, can be worth it. Hydras, the two types of Hydras, the Black Dragons, etc., those could be worth it, but the feral units, not necessarily so, I would argue. And that's what I think about that. Now, when we look at Rakarth, he does start with a Sorceress of Beasts, of Lore of Beasts magic, which isn't really the best lore of magic that you could use. And his Lord effects are as follows. He gets a recruitment duration of -1, 1 turn for all monstrous units in his army, a melee defense. He gets the Beastlord Gaze ability, which stops Rampage, which is always nice because during he's gonna get a lot of monsters that have Rampage, and he gets Whip Slash, and or Whiplash, and this buffs allies in range within 100 meters for 21 seconds, gives them charge speed, charge bonus, armor piercing damage, and base weapon damage. Furthermore, he gets post-battle loot, income from raiding, armor piercing damage, and minus 100% upkeep for Harpy units. So Harpies are not great units. He also gets 5% casualty replenishment in foreign territory, reduces enemy casualty replenishment in local province, and reduces the control in local enemy province. So given all the benefits the AI has, it's not really going to count for a lot. He does get the Abyssal Howl for Hydra units, Frost Breath ability, and melee attack for the 2 Hydra units. He also gets 25% casualties post-battle, so that means more slave. Is increased chance for that monsters will be added to the monster pens while raiding, fighting battles, or occupying settlements. And Scourge Runner, Chariots, and Reaper Bolt Throwers gain Harpy Claw ammunition, which reduces enemy movement speed. Then he also gets an ambush success chance of 25%, recruit rank for Cold One Knights, Cold One Dread Knights, and Cold One Chariot units, and stock for those units. That's a bit of an interesting one. And he gets Apex Predator, which gives weapon strength to Black Dragons, murderous prowess for monstrous units in his entire army, which is always nice to have, and recruit rank +3 for monster units in all armies faction-wide. And he also gets a Black Dragon as a mount, which is really nice. Like he starts with the Scourge Runner Chariot, he goes into a Manticore, and then he goes into a Black Dragon, which is always good. Now, starting position-wise, he starts in the Turtle Isles, which was where Teclis started, and you are at war with the Lizardmen, specifically the Sentinels of Seti. Now, the problem in Rakarth's campaign, believe it or not, is that the Dark Elves are not necessarily the best faction to fight the Lizardmen, because Lizardmen units, when we consider them, Lizardmen units are pretty big, heavily armored units. And the issue in this, particular situation is that them being so large creates problems because your unit roster is not necessarily well designed to take them out. Yes, you do have Dread Spears, but Dread Spears are not the units you want to use in a lot of situations. You can, obviously, but Dread Spears are not efficient in a lot of ways. What you want to do is get Black Ark Corsairs and Dark Shards with shields. But Black Ark Corsairs, while they're fantastic in virtually every other Dark Elven campaign, they won't serve you so well against Lizardmen. You can make it work, sure, but there's also going to be tons of issues. To be fair, though, they will work against the Tomb Kings over here, and they will work against the Dwarves. But you just got to be aware of the Lizardmen problem, because it is going to be a problem. You do have the Bloodhole Coven over here to the north, but you have plenty of enemies surrounding you as well. And it's not like the Bloodhole Coven is necessarily your best friend either in this particular campaign. They are not. What you want to do, though, in this campaign, given the situation over here with the Bloodhole Coven, is you kind of want to ally them, form an alliance with them. So you declare war on the Blue Vipers, and then you and get the trade and get some agreements with these guys in the meantime. Or you could just decide to wipe them out. But you take the entire Turtle Isles. You start with the Great Turtle Isle itself at tier 1, and then you move into the Copper Desert. By this point, you should have a Black Ark, which should provide you with an ample supply of Black Ark Corsairs. And you should also be recruiting Dark Shards, and then eventually Dark Shards with Shields. They are not going to have the luxury of getting Dark Shards with Shields early on, though that's not really too much of an issue given the enemies you're fighting. After that particular point, you probably want to take the Golden Colossus. The problem is, of course, the Dwarves over here in the Spine of Sotek. So you can take the Copper Desert, but if you decide to take the Copper Desert, you're quickly going to run into the issue where if you expand too aggressively to the south, the Dwarves are just going to show up and annihilate you. Your best bet as a result of that would probably be to instead ignore the Golden Colossi and Colossus, and instead head for the Spine of Sotek, and then take the Thrice Cursed Peak if you manage to build a full stack, which you should by the time you take over this entire province and you're moving over there and get the Black Ark. And take the Thrice Cursed Peak and sell that to Skrulk. That will protect your eastern flank. While Gorak will certainly be an issue, you can make a deal with Skrulk. Though it depends on whether or not you have the Vermintide Endgame Crisis. You shouldn't enable the Vermintide Endgame Crisis in this particular campaign. And then you can worry about the Copper Desert. Tehenuan should be marching there at his own rate, so you can go take the Night Forest Road, then wipe out the High Elves over here. But just bear in mind you do have Oxyotl here, but Kairos will obviously deal with this particular problem. And then you can come over here to the north and go deal with Gorak. Campaign victory conditions, you have to control the entirety of the Turtle Isles and do your quest mal. After that, you have to wipe out the High Elven faction. So you're going to want to head over north. Now, what's interesting about this campaign is you actually have a lot of climates that are available, like Chaotic Wasteland, Frozen, Temperate Island, Savanna, Desert, and Jungle. So you can take pretty much the entirety of the East in your campaign with the exception of the mountains, and it will work pretty well. And that's what I recommend you do. Beyond that, but how should you go about it? Well, I would move in a circle here and count on Kairos to deal with Oxyotl, or you could deal with Oxyotl yourself and then sell some of this territory to Kairos to make an alliance with him. And then march over north, deal with Alberic, deal with the Hunts Marshal, deal with Mazdamundi, teach Marafi, who's the real boss of the Dark Elves, and then come over here in Ulthuan. That's your long-term campaign plan. But Rakarth just isn't great because the jungle is not real. The jungle and the Lizardmen are not really the best opponents the Dark Elves can deal with. They're pretty good against High Elves. They're pretty good against other elves. In general, they're pretty good against the Empire. They can hold their own against Chaos. They can hold their own against most factions. They're just not really great against large units early on in a campaign. I mean, Dreadspears, can deal with cavalry, but when you're dealing with Lizardmen, that's a different discussion. Questine signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.